Ladies and gentlemen, pay attention. This is your boy, the coach from the WWE. I would like to welcome you to the very first wrestling podcast in the world to take you on a weekly deep dive into classic matches along with legends of the squared circle. Enjoy the discussion. Enjoy the back and forth. There's so much to get into. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the payoff.
You got lust for Elizabeth right there, brother.
This is Tom Healy, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Jeffrey Ryan. Jeff, you just got the first of probably many Macho Man impersonations today.
Step into a Slim Jim. Oh, yeah. You just got to.
It wasn't bad either.
That was bad. I started slow, but that's all right. We've been working today. It's all right. So
we'll work on it. There might be. We might lose everyone by the end of the episode, but we're gonna get our Macho Man impressions in.
We'll blame that if our subscribers drop off. But glad to be here. What are we now, post Wrestlemania at this point, or we could still be on the road. That's okay. There's another Wrestlemania that eventually we will get to go to, and so that's okay, and so that's always exciting. So we got that going for us. But yeah, this is an exciting one. Just another Macho match. Covering a couple of his recently here, and then of course everyone knows that you're one of the biggest Hulk Hogan fans there is out there. So this is an exciting one to cover.
Dude, I'm a major Mega Powers mark. I often wear my Mega Powers t-shirt to wrestling events.
Well, and then everyone knows you have your open invitation to Marty Jannetty, but Hulk, if it gets back to you, Tom is willing to, once this all lifts, fly and meet you wherever he needs to meet you in order to do an interview. So, and so as your restaurant, whatever, he'll even buy you the dinner. So.
I've got my wish list of guests. It's Hulk Hogan and then like 4 people that you probably would just scratch your head at, but I think they would be awesome guests.
That would be good. Yeah. So, but Hogan, it's out there. We're the open invite. So, as always, of course, you know the drill here. Subscribe to the show, give us the 5 stars, spread the word about the show, leave those reviews. We always appreciate that stuff. It's good stuff. Let us know what you're thinking about the show. Sharing on social media. We always, of course, appreciate that stuff at PAYOFF Pod. We're always going to throw, a couple likes here and there. Tom and I are always checking it. We'll respond. As we said previously, drop us a few lines here. We like sharing some koozies with you guys too. So you never know, we might shoot you a message and share some koozies with you too. And so share a bunch of them so you can give them to your friends, family, all that good stuff, and kind of show off your payoff swag. So we like that. So Tom, what else you got?
Yeah. As a reminder, we do the build, we do the payoff, and we do the aftermath. We are the first wrestling podcast in the world on a weekly basis doing a deep dive into the most famous and the most infamous matches in the history of professional wrestling. And before you know it, Jeff, we're going to be coming up on 1 year of doing the payoff, and we've covered some awesome matches. Make sure to go back in the archive, thumb through those matches, find the matches and the guests that you think will be the most interesting, and download them and take a listen. There's some really good stuff in there, and man, we've got some really fun stuff on tap over the next year. So thanks for being along with us on this ride here on the payoff. But with that being said, it's time to get into why we wanted to do this match. And Jeff, this is just a no-brainer for me. In some ways, they're my 2 favorite of all time. I love Shawn Michaels. I love the Macho Man. I love Hulk Hogan. There's a couple other guys that I'd put in that category. Going back and watching some of this Macho Man stuff, man, as crazy as it sounds, I just think the guy was underrated. The thing is about Macho Man is he was a hell of a worker. I mean, you've heard me say this before, but he had the best WrestleMania match at 3, 4, 5, 7, 8. Okay. That's pretty crazy if you think about it. Okay. And if they would have let him work with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 10, he would have had the best match at that one too. But anyways, Savage could work, man. Could he talk? Yeah, I think his promos, I know that we mess around with his voice and how crazy his promos were, but they were excellent. Like Warriors promos were just crazy. Savages were intense and really good. And this program, more than any others, hammer it home. And so we've talked about how he's a great worker. We've talked about how he's a great promo. The other thing that makes him so special, he was an incredible babyface, but he was an incredible heel. And I believe, Jeff, that this was maybe the best build to a wrestling match in the history of professional wrestling.
Boy, that's a take right there. That's impressive. That is something else.
So why did you want to cover this one?
Yeah, this is one I wish in hindsight you and I had known to keep our wrestling buddies in better shape, especially these two, because God only knows what they'd be worth nowadays. Hell, even when we were looking at some of the shows that you and I've been to, and they're selling them there, like, but they fetch a pretty penny. Like they are worth it, especially in good condition. And so that's one of those, you kind of had those, and this is just like it says, like the mega powers, and we'll get into it a little bit. But I think, especially when you and I both were younger, this was in that era where I think these two were the two top stars anywhere that we would have access to. You had Flair, you had, some of these other guys that were, out there doing these things. But I think this match and these two at this time, they were the best that there was. And it's hard to overlook that and give the credit where credit's due. So I'm excited. Let's get right into this, Tom. You want to throw it over to the build? You ready?
Yeah, let's get into the build.
Oh, it's time for the build.
All right, here we are, April 2nd, 1989. We are back in Atlantic City. Now, they said it's from Trump Plaza, but in reality, it actually took place at the Atlantic City Convention Hall. I believe it connected to Trump Plaza, or there was a walkway or a parking garage or something. They were in the general...
Twitter, let us know. Yep.
Yeah, they were in the general proximity, but it actually wasn't inside there. Because I remember thinking, man, that's a huge venue to be inside a casino. But in reality, it's actually the convention center. When you go back and you watch this, Jeff, like, it's crazy because there was like 20,000 almost people in there. The attendance was 18,946. And you're thinking, how big of a convention center is this? I'd love to see some other pictures of this. We'll have to look them up. Maybe we'll post them on Twitter this week. But they must have had a ring around it or something. Like, it was built to host people. I'm sure they brought in a lot of bleachers and stuff, but a really awkward building that came across way smaller on TV. Like, I just, if you would have told me before I actually was paying attention to it, how many did those WrestleMania 4 and 5 hold? I would have said there were like 5,000 or 10,000 in the building. I thought it was a much smaller building. But
so this is interesting. Quick search. It says the venue seats 10,500 for ice hockey. A maximum capacity can accommodate 14,770 for concerts.
So
yeah.
I guess it could have held 18,000, or it could be bullshit, but.
Well, that's WWE numbers there, and so who knows? It could have been 25,000 too. We'll never know. So yeah.
So the tagline is "The Mega Powers Explode." Had that awesome visual of Hogan and Savage with the explosion in the background. I mean, this was a great cover, as was the WrestleMania 6 one with Hogan and Warrior. Dude, this show, man, some of these early WrestleManias, this was just not the best wrestling that was taking place, man. Just brutal. And we don't have to go through this match by match, but there's just a lot of 4, 5, 6, 8, 10-minute matches in here. And they really didn't have hot openers at the time. They really just kind of built up towards, as the show went on. A couple noteworthy things on this show. We've got the Rockers. Okay. They would lose to Twin Towers, but we got our first Rockers WrestleMania sighting, which is pretty cool. Surprisingly good kind of big man, little man tag match. Interestingly enough, Ted DiBiase, man, this is a year after losing to Savage in the main event of WrestleMania 4. He's in a double count out against Brutus Beefcake. So far from the top of the card. Going through this, man, Mr. Perfect defeating the Blue Blazer, who we would obviously go on to know as Owen Hart. That's pretty cool. Demolition winning against the Powers of Pain tag team championship match. Those were some fun tag teams back in the day, man.
That was the Barbarian and the Warlord for you, those of you at home. And yes, they were two different people. Yes.
Yeah.
With Mr. Fuji. Can't forget that. With Mr. Fuji. Yeah.
Brainbusters Arn Anderson on this show with Bobby Heenan defeating Strikeforce, who I always enjoyed that team, Rick Martel and Tito Santana. Now, this is an interesting one. Jake Roberts defeating Andre the Giant, who was with Bobby Heenan. Man, just tough to watch. They still had Andre going out for these matches. I mean, this is, really struggling to move around. And they still had him out there in the mid card. I just think Andre was like, look, if I just want to wrestle as long as I physically can, because I know he enjoyed being around the boys and traveling, and I just wanted to be a part of it. Another one that I noticed on this show, this was Rick Rude defeating the Ultimate Warrior for the Intercontinental Championship. That's where it's a really great finish. Bobby Heenan holds the Warrior's legs down. It was such a dastardly heel thing to do. I just remember watching that and I can't believe he did that. Really, really good finish. Couple blow-off matches. And then the main event, the reason we're here, Hogan Savage. So, man, pretty much a one match show. Again, some of these early WrestleManias did not have a whole heck of a lot on them. Jeff, again, I said it. This is one of the greatest builds in the history of professional wrestling. Walk everyone through how we got there, and I'm sure I'm going to have some notes and things to add to this.
That's fine. So WrestleMania 5, it took place. It was April 2nd, 1989. So again, we're going to hit the rewind button on this. And we actually had them first crossing paths. It was Saturday Night Main Event 12. This was September of 1987. So really 18 months before this match is when the first kind of groundwork was being laid for this one. So we're, in this September 1987 and need to get to April 1989. And so what you got is Macho Man had a shot. It was against the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental Championship. But Savage was attacked by the Hart Foundation. Hogan came out. He kind of saved Savage. And this is where up till now, Savage has been a heel, but now obviously makes the face turn. So you've got the two of them, working together, starting to work together a little bit here. So we're talking WrestleMania 5 today, but we have to go back to WrestleMania 4 too. Again, these are super long builds. You've got Randy Savage beating the $1 Million Man. It was a tournament final, so that who would win the vacant, at the time, vacant World Heavyweight Championship. And he actually won it. It was actually with the help of Hogan. And then Hogan came out after. They were congratulating each other in the ring. And soon after, this is where you have the Mega Powers. Why the Mega Powers? It should be obvious. Like, they are literally the two biggest superstars at the time. And so,
dude, and when they first shook hands and formed, oh my, that was an
classic moment. Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Very, very well done.
So they had really just a lot of feuds that, at this point going on a lot. So now we've kind of fast forwarded. We're still a year out, don't forget. And so they really dominated. They were face tag. And so they would go against the heels. They were kind of, dominating everyone. And so, but it was actually at this point, they really, that whole year of 1988 where they were, doing well, but you started to see the cracks start to form. It was early 1989. What it was, or actually kind of really late 1988. We're now at Saturday Night Main Event. This would be 14. It was December 1988, where you had Hogan. He was getting beat down by the Twin Towers, like we've talked a little bit about here, who at the time, and who they were, it was the Big Boss Man and Akeem. And so after the two of them, so what you had is Hogan getting beat down. Savage came out. He kind of cleared the ring. He used a steel chair, kind of took everybody out. And so Elizabeth, though, of course, the first woman of wrestling for a lot of us, Elizabeth took Hogan to the backstage. It's actually, Savage a little jealous at this fact. And so he thought, he's really kind of, not the prime star at this point. And this is when, so December 88 is when you start to see these contracts for him. And so he was angry that Hogan, using Elizabeth as his manager as well too. And so confronted each other. And so that's where you start to see this. So it was that Royal Rumble of that year where Hogan, he accidentally eliminated Savage as he was trying to eliminate Bad News Brown.
Was it an accident though?
Was it? And we'll never know. Like, time will tell. And so,
dude, so complete side note, but there is, and I've seen a few people like bring this up before. Hulk Hogan's like arguably a heel. Like, he dumps his best friend out of the ring. He carries his wife back to the ring. He cheats a lot. Like, it's just so funny. Like, the biggest baby face ever. He does some real heelish shit.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And so, and it's always the shades of that. Yeah. You just never know. So, but you've got that was, him getting tossed out at the Royal Rumble. But then February 3rd, you had main event. Hogan and Savage were facing the Twin Towers once again. It was a tag match that really, this is really what led to the end here. So during, part of the match, Savage was actually thrown over the ropes and onto Miss Elizabeth. She's pretty, of course, she's knocked out at this point. Hogan carried her to the back. He actually left Savage in the ring to kind of fend for himself against the tag teams. Now you got a 2-on-1 type situation. And while Hogan eventually came back, this is when Savage slapped him in the face, took the belt, and then turned heel and walked away from Hogan. So just kind of and that's all it took. And so, and that's how we got to kind of this point. You had, Savage attacking Hogan backstage at this point. And that is when then Hogan challenged Savage to the match at WrestleMania 5 for the World Heavyweight Championship, which Savage accepted. So a very long build. I say you could kind of take it from the breakup or the start of the breakup if you really wanted to, but you can't really ignore that time where they were the mega powers, because that's where, that's the story of Mania and the tagline. So really over a year where these two, were dominant, and they built up the fact that they were together and had this great tag team. And then now though, it leads to them, Savage slapping Hogan, going heel again, if you will, and setting up this match at Mania. So Tom, I know you said you had some additional notes or things you might want to share. So what else do you got?
I'm not the number 3 in this group. I'm the number 1, brother.
There's number 2 for you, fans.
That backstage segment, I'm sure everyone's seen it and it's fresh in their mind. I know it is with me, where Savage completely turns and hits Hogan, and Liz is back there. And dude, I'm telling you, it's one of the greatest builds in the history of professional wrestling. And it's so believable, partially because it was real. You thought these guys hated each other. It wasn't some overthought gimmick. It was just, look, you got a woman, you got 2 guys. It wasn't hokey, and it's been done hokey so many times. Go back and watch this stuff. Go back and watch these promos. Go back and watch this storyline. Go back and watch all this stuff Jeff just talked about. If this happened on today's show, okay, in this era, you would go, this is absolutely incredible. So it not only holds up today, it's better than 99.9% of the stuff that you will see in professional wrestling. I don't even know what's better. But dude, these promos and the storyline and the way it was executed, the build up for it, as long as it went on, was just absolutely incredible. Couple other things. You did a great job. I thought this was the best stuff that maybe either guy did in their career. That's how good it was. It's crazy. You're talking about Saturday night's main event. Jeff, keep in mind that these shows aired on Saturday night on NBC, and I believe they were the lead into Saturday Night Live. So that's how big wrestling was and how big of a platform these things got. Can you imagine 5 or 10 or 15 million people watching, Brock McIntyre build on NBC leading into it, leading into Saturday Night Live, which at the time was a hell of a lot bigger than it is now. It's crazy.
Well, and they did a lot of these. By my count, there was close to 30 of them, leading, this late kind of 1980s into early 1990s. They brought him back for a little bit in late 2000 or 2000 aughts. But yeah, you're right. And if this was, and we can see where it eventually got was because you're right. It was the lead in for Saturday Night Live. And at the time, a name that a lot of us wrestling fans would know, this is the executive producer of Saturday Night Live was Dick Ebersol. And we know the joint venture that Dick Ebersol and Vince McMahon went on to form many, many years later. And so that was where the start of some of this partnership started happening, and they're kind of TV working together. So just
Ebersol produced. I mean, he's right behind the camera for that Hogan Savage thing. It's just
right.
It's wild. But and NBC was a much bigger deal then than it is now because there weren't 1,000 channels and streaming. I mean, it was a big deal to be on that platform. There were only so many channels people had, and some people didn't even have cable at that time. I've touched on it before, but that WrestleMania 4, a couple things with that. Savage wins the tournament. I thought Hogan was just way too involved in that show. Him and the Andre thing was the biggest match going into it. He interferes in the main event. He's, giving Savage the title. I understand they were trying to make Savage a star. It was just too much Hogan, and Hogan's going to overshadow anyone he's in the ring with. Yep. So I just never liked that. And I also think Savage and Steamboat should have had a great rematch, and they didn't on that show. Disappointing there. Mega Powers and Mega Bucks, which took place at SummerSlam. Dude, at the end of that match, it ends with Savage hitting an elbow drop 3/4 of the way across the ring onto DiBiase. Right after he hits the elbow drop, Hogan is already moving and hits the leg drop. It was awesome. Go back and watch that. It was just great. And then after that match, there was a little bit of a, subtle build towards obviously where we were going with everything. So really, really great stuff. Dude, let's watch this match, man. We've talked a lot about the build. We know it was awesome. I have not seen this match in a long, long time, probably since I was a kid, right, in its entirety. So the question is, does the match hold up to the incredible build that we got in? So for those that want to watch along with us, we are at the 3-hour and 18 mark of WrestleMania 5, the WWE Network. Again, that's the 3-hour, 18-minute mark. For those watching on streaming or elsewhere, it's right when the match starts. So, Jeff, let's jump into it. With that being said, it's time for the payoff.
Oh, it's time for the payoff.
All right, we're here. 3 hours and 18 minutes in the WWE Network, match about to start. What's going through your mind right now, Jeff?
Just the psychology right now, and then they get right into it. Like, they don't waste time. There isn't, a whole lot of kind of screwing around, but Hulk showing off his kind of power. They tie up real quick, but then that classic kind of throwing him back. You don't see it anymore. And so then they're really trying to figure each other out. And so I think that's I just enjoy seeing that.
Man, I love Savage's tights. I always love his ring gear, but dude, just the hot pink, it's a good contrast to what Hogan was wearing. I forget the story on Savage's elbow. I know it was very injured, and there was some concern he wasn't going to be able to work this match. It's heavily bandaged, as you see.
Yeah, he's got a giant pad on it, and it's all taped up, really tight.
Dude, again, Hogan just running around the ring. Dude, again, you've heard me say it on here, but a better in-ring worker than you remember when he wanted to be, right? I may have mentioned this recently. Did you see that YouTube clip I shared of Hogan wrestling in Japan?
Yes. Yeah, I know you shared a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. Just incredible. But
we got a lot of feedback on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. So yeah, I mean, the guy could go when he needed to, but just a little slow start to the match, just kind of feeling each other out. Savage, just complete heel, right? When he wanted to be a heel, he was such a good heel. Obviously worked as a heel WrestleMania 7 against Warrior in that great match as well. But he's super athletic, but he kind of works as a coward in everything he does. And that's one of the things about Savage, man. You can't say that about every wrestler. Obviously, you can't about both of these legends in there. They were great baby faces and they were great heels.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, and then for those of you, kind of a small little factoid here, sitting ringside would be our kind of, no matter how you feel about him, our current president, Donald Trump, is sitting right there ringside, playing up the Trump angle on some of this. So, good stuff. So,
WWE
again,
Hall of
the
Famer.
classic heel. That's right. Excuse me, Hall of Famer. So, so the classic heel move right now, Hogan kind of chasing Savage outside of the ring, and then Savage using Miss Elizabeth as a shield to try and protect himself, so that Hogan wouldn't hit her. And so,
well, and you mentioned Trump ringside, man. That's the problem with WrestleMania 4 and 5 is, as a casino, a lot of these tickets were comped, and so you'll notice there's a lot of people on TV in prominent seats that are wearing suits and ties. Again, nothing wrong with that, but the problem is that as a crowd, this was half the fans, from what I've read, were just like, comped or weren't big fans, and so you'll notice the reactions aren't great, especially ringside on TV, and it takes away a little bit from this match.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, like you said a little bit here, kind of a little bit of a slow start here. There isn't a whole lot of like true, and granted, I wouldn't expect it to be like a submission kind of show. But the two of them really just kind of, there's your first real slam of the match. They're just kind of working a little slow here to kind of get going, even though it seemed like, right out of the gate they were getting going, but there's the missed elbow drop. Hogan popped right up. So Hogan, so if you had to, I probably know this, but you had to pick, any given day, you're always going to go with Hogan before anybody else. Who beats Hogan, and not just in the ring, but I'm talking like you for your personal, who do you like more? Who beats Hogan?
Dude, I mean, my top four are Hogan, Michaels, Savage.
It's always tough. I know.
Austin. I mean, I just, to me, as I've been going back and watching some of these old ones, and we covered Steamboat Savage recently, dude, Savage is like on my Mount Rushmore, man. Hogan, I love. Austin, I mean, you got to put him on there because of everything he did. I love Michaels, but it's just interesting. I keep saying this, but I just forgot how good Randy Savage was. As an in-ring worker, dude, I think he's better than Flair. And I'm sure some people disagree. That's fine. He was such an athletic, great in-ring worker and wrestled so many different types of matches. He did so many different things. He didn't do the same 10 spots in every match. He also worked heel and baby great. He was fantastic on the mic. Dude, I said it a few weeks ago, Jeff. As far as a wrestling superstar, Randy Savage, the Macho Man, he's bigger than The Rock. He's better than The Rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and that absolutely makes sense. And so, like you said, and the reason there is a lot of guys in suits in the front row. It actually looks kind of odd. But then they kept calling it Trump Plaza. And the reason being is because they were the big sponsor this year. And so that's why it kind of kept referring it to it. And that's just the revisionist history of WWE and calling things what they want. Kind of crazy move there. Hogan dumping Savage kind of outside of the ring. Miss Elizabeth kind of unsure what to do there, standing there.
And she added so much to this. I mean, Liz was so good. I forgot to mention it in the build. It's the night the Mega Powers really exploded, right? And that huge thing happened behind the scenes. The bump that Liz took, Savage gets thrown out of the ring. He gets thrown onto her. Her head hits off the cement. It was crazy. It was, I mean, I don't know if she got hurt or not, but man, she took a spill and a half. It was excellent. And she added so much to this.
And that was probably one of my my youngest or first wrestling memories was their wedding. When the two of them got married and her saying, "Oh yeah," and accepting the proposal. Which,
Elizabeth, will you marry me?
and the crowd going ape shit after the very soft "oh yeah" from her. Like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh, be careful there. And so, but yeah, it's just really good stuff here. So first pinfall attempt here, Macho trying to cover Hogan. Just good stuff. And we've got blood. There we go. Get the gloves on. We've got some blood. And kind of tied up and things like that, and them going at this. So, I think you raised the kind of interesting point of the kind of Mount Rushmore of wrestling, because I've seen this floating around on Twitter a lot.
It's everywhere. It's
more and more, and especially whether it's Mania season, like so. Great kind of chokehold now. Hogan standing up, and then Macho taking him right back to the mat. Yeah.
Dude, this venue just wasn't WrestleMania worthy. I mean, we're coming off the Silver Dome, and then we have this venue 2 years in a row. I don't remember, but I think it was very comparable in terms of just a weak crowd the year before too.
Yeah, and then they were 6 was in Toronto, so it was a kind of a different.
Yeah, exactly.
And especially too when you've got like, just say for the sake of 18,000 for the sake of the conversation here, but then you get like close to like WWE numbers, almost 70,000 in Toronto. Like it makes a big difference. And then if we're back down to a small venue again for 7, which was in LA, and so you kind of have that, and so just kind of the back and forth of that. I think you really need. Like it just doesn't, I guess too, especially compared to what we know now, like even just looking at ringside, like people are like crammed, not ringside, but like on the padding around the ring, people are just crammed in there, like cameraman, like there's no room to work.
The one thing I did kind of dig about this was they walked down those steps for the entrances. I liked it. It felt like it was more like a big fight boxing feel to it than like staged wrestling. Like, I mean, I know obviously the grand entrances and the pyro and all that stuff we love, but I felt like these guys were like in a fight, and it was kind of cool watching them come down that way. The other thing was Savage as champion came out first. Do you believe the champion should always come out last for championship matches?
Yeah, for sure. They should be announced that way. That's part of the deal. Absolutely.
I totally agree. I like the champ coming out second. I like both guys in the center of the ring holding up the belt, doing the announcements buffer style. I like all that stuff, that big fight feel.
And you and I have talked about this over multiple episodes at this point. Like sometimes it needs that sports feel. Like sometimes it's lacking that, and so that's what you want that for it to feel like. If it's it's WrestleMania, it should have big entrances. It should have all these different things. Now, granted, I don't want to watch 10 hours of wrestling on a Sunday night, which broke it up this year. But I think that's one of those things where if you can present a product well, and I get people want to be on the card, they fight to be on the card, and there's sometimes there's a reason to put them on the card, but then other times something like this, you got to do the right, and that's Vince is going to Vince, as we seen a lot lately with everything happening, and he beat coronavirus, so he didn't cancel it, canceled wrestling. So it's just one of those things where I think that how you present it makes such a big difference, and it's been presented the same way for so long, but it's one of those where we can armchair this all day long, but then
that's the whole point of the payoff, dude.
Right? It's no point. Yeah, that's what that's what we're here doing for everybody. But and I do agree a little bit though. We complain, ask for something different. They give us something different, and then we still complain. Which welcome to wrestling.
You mentioned kind of the production and realism of things. I have two. Savage is getting dumped to the outside of the ring. Gene Okerlund, and I noticed this on some of the build stuff that we were watching. God, he was just so good. I mean, you watch now, and whoever they have backstage, it's usually, they all just look like they're acting. They look like they're like overreacting. It's so fake. It's so it's just terrible. I mean, Gene was just, he was so serious about it, and it felt like a sport, and he led him the right way, and he was so genuine. I feel like now, you watch him, watch the next time you watch Raw or SmackDown, dude, it's just they're all like reacting to things. It's so stupid, oh my gosh, and then sometimes they laugh, and it's just so campy and scripted, and it's terrible.
Well, and that's part, like, I think you hit it on the nail there. Like, it's just scripted. Like, and so like that, it's just too scripted. And
And
I
these
think
people aren't good actors.
no, and you're hearing more and more, like, especially like, John Moxley, Dean Ambrose saying, like, now that he's gone over to AEW, like, he does have
Liz blocking the boom. Hogan gets tossed into the railing there, or the post there. Good.
we hear the behind the scenes of, like, they're able to do a little bit more, and it's not as scripted as everything. And there was some dirt sheet stuff there for a while saying that there was a little less scripted recently, but still at the same time. So Macho yelling at Miss Elizabeth right now because she's trying to help Hogan on the outside. She's looking gorgeous. I would protect her right here. I'd run out and save her.
Hey, so we have Jesse Ventura on commentary. I don't know if you've ever noticed this or not. You seem to like the guy more than I do. I just think Corey Graves watched a lot of Jesse Ventura on commentary and a lot of Bobby Heenan on commentary, and he tries to emulate them, and he does a really poor job of it.
I'll get to that. We just had Miss Elizabeth getting tossed to the back, though, because of her involvement, which was not very much, but her getting thrown to the back there. Yeah, we've talked about it at length how Bobby Heenan is the ultimate kind of heel wrestler, and we said kind of Graves a lot of times. It feels like he's like. I get it, like the
savage to the top rope, bombs away, double axe handle, yep. Boom, love it. Love when he did it, especially when he hit him on the guardrail. Hogan selling the neck.
I think
you didn't see a lot of that back in the day, man. Nobody jumped off the top rope, let alone to the outside.
And this is just, I think that while he has like kind of his personality that he tries to sell, Savage working over the neck now, kind of bringing him over the ropes as he kind of jumped over. Yeah, I think it is.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's just like he like tries to be a heel, but then he tries to be a baby face on his podcast, and he just says stupid things to like provoke people. It's just goofy, childish stuff. You know what I mean? Like I just think that, again, I think he's trying to be Heenan and Ventura, like, oh, I'm going to be the heel announcer, and it's just not good. It's like, you're not heel. Like, if you're going to be a heel announcer, then be a heel announcer and be like, Jerry Lawler was in '93 when he first came in, or don't do it. So
then I don't think the 3-man booth helps either, but that's a different conversation. So Macho just going for a little bit of a splash there, just kind of a standing splash onto Hogan. Hogan, you don't see this much anymore. Hogan's still selling his neck being injured.
Yep.
And then Macho, after the distracted ref, using part of the bandage off of his elbow pad to choke Hogan.
Good.
Ref not seeing it, so that's always issue. Look at it; they're just hiding that little piece of tape. Look, you don't see that much anymore. Like that.
I'm telling you, he was a really good heel wrestler.
And then the ref just checked him real quick, just to see what was happening there, but he had tossed it already, so you didn't see it. And so that's one of those where, it's such a big spot where the heels get caught or something like that. And it's not Eddie Guerrero, tossing the belt to kind of protect himself. But that was just an interesting little move there. This is a good heel move that someone should steal.
Here's something that I have never seen discussed before. Is Randy Savage the only world champion in history to win the title as a babyface and turn heel while he's the world champion?
I'm sure not. I'm sure there's somebody. It's a long list. We'd have to spend a lot of time kind of reading through it to see who may or may not.
It's a good question though, right?
So you got Macho,
I couldn't think of anyone.
Here you go. Rope on the corner with the elbow drop, hits it. That was Bill. He does get the distance on that.
I told you.
That was
and always hits it square.
But Hogan jumps out or kicks out at 1.5.
You know that finish probably had never been kicked out of, at least with a referee not knocked out.
At least, yeah.
Remember, no one was kicking out finishes back then, ever.
Yep. Everybody had a protected finisher, but that's how I think that's how it should be.
Absolutely.
That you need to finishers should be more protected, and they should actually be. If you remember, because even Kevin Owens, he's doing the stunner now. Kevin Owens came over. He had a pop-up power bomb that nobody else was doing, and like for whatever reason, he stopped doing it. And now, like, he's just the stunner, which I get it, but come on, like, let him do his finish. There's the big boot to Macho. Hogan, real quick, leg drop. Here we go. Quick spin. 1, 2, 3. Let's celebrate.
Crowd kind of got into it at the end.
Yeah, they're cheering now. They're gonna,
but not going as. Yeah, I mean, you could see, but yeah, I mean, they're going, but it was pretty quiet up until then. I got one more observation for you before we go into the aftermath.
Go for it.
So there weren't a lot of world title matches during this era. Remember, SummerSlam, you had the year where it was, Hogan and Warrior were on the same team. The year where Hogan and Savage were on the same team. There weren't a lot of like world title matches during this era in those. Survivor Series almost never had a world title match early on. Rumble, these guys were both in the Rumble when Savage was champion. So, like, it's just crazy. Like the Royal Rumble, a big expensive pay-per-view, you're only doing 4 a year, and there was no world title match.
Yeah, I think that it started really, this was the year where you started to see it getting shot back and forth a little bit, but kind of looking though, like WrestleMania was some of the only time that the belt did change hands. So I think, which is interesting because you had just some people that, there was some other, I see like there's some Survivor Series and some Rumbles in here and things like that. But for the most part though, like, yeah, it was really only Mania where the belt started changing hands.
Yeah, because they put the world champion in the Royal Rumble match or in a Survivor Series match or in a tag match at SummerSlam. They did that a number of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it looks like starting in about the
like Hogan and Beefcake were a tag team, I think, against Andre.
So if you're kind of doing some quick math here, so Warrior had it in 1990, and there was maybe 35 champs in between like 1990 to 2000, which it's not really a lot when you think about it.
3.5 a year.
Right. And so like, it's not crazy, especially like nowadays when you think like, God, I would kill for that nowadays with freaking Brock out there. Like, I don't, he's got the belt back. Here we go again. So yeah. Well, yeah.
You know how I feel about the Winged Eagle belt.
Yes, I do. Especially, yeah.
I sent you a picture of me wearing mine today, so that'll tell you. Dude,
he did. He's not lying. So
yeah. Dude, I love that belt, but I guess they wanted to sell more belts, so I don't know. President of the United States watching on, just surreal to think about. Dude, so the match was what it was. We'll get back into it. Hogan, Warrior, Hogan, Savage, back-to-back years like this. I love those covers. I love the, iconic WrestleMania main events just being larger than life during this era. So with that, let's get to the aftermath.
Ho! It's time for the aftermath.
All right, Jeff. Initial thoughts.
Just, not superior wrestling, but it was a great match though still. The two of them in the story, I think the build outshined the match itself here, but it was still pretty good.
The match does not equal the build. And I don't just mean not being a great wrestling match. And I know this didn't happen in this era, but it's like, this is a match that needed more. Okay. It needed that stipulation. It needed that steel cage. Not that they did last man standing or, no DQ matches really at all in this era. But if there was ever a time to do it, these two just fighting, right? Mm. I mean, going on the outside, just beating the tar out of each other. Both men could have bled, or there could have been more blood, using weapon. I mean, they just needed more. I mean, this was like this is one of the most intense builds in the history of professional wrestling, right? So you gotta pair that with a match that equals it. And it just didn't. So just my thought there. We'll get more into it. I'm really curious how this match was received. So walk us through storyline wise what happens following this between these two, and then I'm really curious to get to the write-ups because you organized them and I haven't seen them.
Yeah, we got some interesting stuff here. So I'll start with, so the feud did continue for these two, but we do have to talk about the 1989 classic film No Holds Barred, which starred Hulk Hogan and Tom Lister Jr., which you would recognize as he's one of those you'd recommend him if you saw him. And so
no, wasn't it Tony Lister?
Or Tom, that's what I have. Yeah, I forget.
I
but
thought
either
it was
way.
Tony. Okay.
So you have Hogan as Rip, you have Zeus. And of course, like this storyline eventually, or them being in an actual movie, this was, of course, before the Marine, long before the Marine, all 6 of them, which we're due for another one any day now. But anyways, the two of them.
Right, Tom Tiny Lister. So we were both right.
All right, so we were close.
Or I was saying Tony, not Tyne.
He's definitely not a tiny guy, that's for sure. But anyway, so what we happened was Zeus, just weird here because
terrible.
Wanting to take advantage of Hogan in real life after the movie, and it was a whole really weird thing. And so he was billed in the WWF as Zeus, and the two of them, him and Savage, formed an alliance. You actually had, after this, with Hogan joining with Brutus the Barber Beefcake, it was actually a tag team main event SummerSlam of that year.
Oh, that's right. That's when he tagged with Brutus.
When Hogan and Brutus beat Zeus and Savage. And so they continued, though, like they had a steel cage match, which eventually that was the end of that storyline, thank God. But the two of them would, of course, it was actually a rematch. It was actually main event where the two of them, but Hogan won that one too. It was weird, like how this all played out after the fact. The partnership, and I get it. At the time, it was what was happening. It was the hot thing. It was WWF trying to sell their movie. I get it. I still do appreciate the Miz plugging all of the Marine movies. I wish Cena should do it more often. But it's one of those where Hogan had that. Hogan obviously did just fine. After all this, of course, though, Savage actually took a new manager after Miss Elizabeth. It was the one and only Sensational Sherry. She came in, kind of interrupted an interview, playing the heel, where Hogan ended up getting hit with a chair shot. It was just a whole thing that how it played out. And she was actually his manager for a very long time, a couple of years actually, and so. And kind of doing that. So the two of them obviously did just fine. But, kind of some really oddball storylines after like such a great build that we had. Getting to this point though.
Yeah. So, it was just a bad stretch for Savage. WrestleMania 6, that it was Savage and Sherry against Dusty and Sapphire. Liz is involved. It sucked. It was just, they really just did not use Savage well. There was probably about an 18-month stretch. And then before you know it, WrestleMania 7, he's in that retirement match. WrestleMania 8, he's in the world title match. So, it was just a bad little stretch for him. And he was not used well at all. You're exactly right. So yeah, that's it, man. Not a great aftermath, if you will. The Zeus thing just fell flat, obviously. It was also fun to think Buster Douglas was involved. Why was he involved? Because he knocked out Mike Tyson. It was supposed to be Tyson in that role. So
Tyson got his day eventually, but that's all right.
Yeah. Tyson got his wrestling spot. So
the write-ups.
What do you? I'm very curious about this.
So I'll start with, let me give them both to you, and then you can rant all you want here. So I'll turn the mic over. So the Observer gave this one a 2.75 stars. It was actually the highest rated match on the card. We talked a little
shows you how bad it sucked.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this one, but that was kind of where we talked about that. So and then interesting here, I had to really dig, but the PW Torch did have a write-up here. I'm going to kind of read just parts of it here. And so the 13th and final match of the event saw Hulk Hogan pin Macho Man Randy Savage in a replay of any average Hulk Hogan title match. Elizabeth didn't get into play too much and was sent back to the dressing room by Savage during the match. That's the last we heard of her, which interesting, especially after she had been a part of this for, as much of this. So, and kind of skipping forward to the, here we go. In one night, they killed their top heel, gave their top baby face an unneeded belt, and gave us a mega power cap gun shot, not an explosion. I was really looking forward to a solid 25-minute match where both men worked hard and had the best match they could put together. I look forward to an angle that would draw for rematches, mainly having Savage retain the title. Fans would go see Hulk's second chance to regain his belt. Both men worked harder in the pre-match interviews than this match. I hope they know what they're doing, because Savage was simply buried big time. Where do they go from here? Despite it being terrible and possibly worse than last year's WrestleMania 4, I enjoyed the card just because I enjoy seeing things unfold. But once it was over, I realized how truly bad this entire show was. 3 stars for the match. So 3 stars, 2 3/4 stars. Tom, I will turn it over to you for your thoughts and your score. Go.
There's not one thing that you just read off that I disagree with.
Okay.
I mean, dude, all of it, right? The build for this was incredible. Okay. We've talked about that. The storyline, the interviews, the way they built it up, the time it took, everything made perfect sense. It was incredible. The crowd and the venue, bad. Okay. The match, it just wasn't a good match. These guys can both work. I mean, there's been great matches that they both had for whatever reason. And I don't know, for as much as Savage obsessed over the way he planned matches, this just needed, it needed to be a better wrestling match, but it needed more intensity. And I don't know, if you do a ref bump and you go outside, if you, involve some weapons or something, if you have more blood, it just needed to be more intense. If you're going to have the most intense build ever, then you need to have a match that equals that. It didn't. So 2.75 and 3 on the match. Yeah, I agree. That's probably accurate in terms of the actual match. Killing Savage as a heel, you absolutely did. Hogan kicked out of his finisher. Hogan dominated the match. Hogan easily won once he kicked out of that finish. There was no heat left on Savage. What else was he going to do? And then they did the stupid thing with Zeus, and then he's in a mid-card bluff feud a year later. So I don't understand how. They should have had, even if Savage lost, he should have come out way stronger and said, look, you cheated, Hogan, whatever. And he had nothing left. Maybe Savage should have retained, but at the very least, he shouldn't have lost the way he lost, because you just killed him. And again, did Hogan need the title? No. Was it fine? He got it. Yeah. Send him home happy. And then the aftermath, everything that really happened between these two after, completely sucked. And they really kept them apart after that. Again, they were nowhere near each other at 6 or 7. At 8, you did, you had them both involved in the world title, but then you did Hogan, Sid, and you did Savage, Flair. So you kept them apart again. So really no interaction between these two. Of course, I don't know what was going on behind the scenes with them, but obviously it's rumored there's some significant heat at this time. So anyways, I say all that to say that I'll give my payoff score. Dude, God, it sucks because there's so much I loved leading up to this, and then it just kind of fell flat. It wasn't what it needed to be. I'll give it a 7.5 overall. And it pains me to say that because I was really excited about this. The match just really wasn't good. And the Liz stuff, she just left and that was it. Hogan wins clean and kicks out of the finish, and there's no heat left. There was no angle after the match or anything to keep something on Savage, and just disappointing. And I don't know, Jeff, I'm curious what you think. Am I being too kind or what?
No, because I'm going to be harder and I'm going to give it a 6. I think that the build overshot the match. And I think, like, we've talked a lot about some of these old matches, like you and I going back and watching them, they're not great wrestling. And I think so much of the story is told outside of the ring back in this day, like the promos. Like you remember, a lot of times I remember more of like Hogan's promos and Macho's promos and Jake the Snake holding the snake and, Sid Vicious. And like, I remember those things more than the in-ring product for whatever it's worth, good or bad. So I think that them having this match was just not, in a lot of ways, they just didn't really have a great match, plain and simple. And so I think that a year-long build, and that's what you get. Like looking back on it and us having the 2020 hindsight, it's like, boy, that wasn't really like kind of a whimper. I mean, it was barely a 15-minute match.
Yeah, and again, it just didn't match the intensity. It's okay that they didn't have a great match, but if they had an intense brawl, or if they had some crazy intensity to it, or there was some violence or something, right? It just was like a TV match.
Even the little bit of blood, I get that's verboten nowadays, but it's one of those where there was very little of that. Like, I don't know what they were going for with that and kind of what was happening, but and the blade job on that, just something they didn't stick the landing, I guess is the best way to say it. So
completely agreed.
So interesting. So Tom, any final thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Dude, nothing. I'm just underwhelmed. I'm disappointed, man. I had better expectations for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm in the same boat as you, that and you and I had not, sometimes we catch the match before whereas we're kind of prepping, and other times we don't fully watch the match. This is when we didn't. And like I said, I think I caught parts of it, but sitting here watching the whole thing, it's just kind of a letdown. So what are you going to do? They're not all 5-star Meltzer classics. So that's okay. But not sports entertained. I don't say that very often, but I was not sports entertained, unfortunately. So there you go.
All right.
Yeah. So with that, as always, we appreciate everybody, listening to us. We will be back next week. Definitely go back, now that everybody has a whole lot of time on their hands, everybody just kind of being at home, definitely check out our old episodes. Like I said, we are on social media. We are always posting on there, kind of throwing stuff out there. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at Payoff Bio. We may not be able to send you those koozies right now, but some of you, we've been getting them. We look forward to kind of sending that stuff out and kind of sharing that stuff. So, Tom, what do you got for us? You want to snap into a finish here? What are you thinking?
Oh, yeah. Thank you as always for thinking, and joining us on the Payoff.